All right, we are embarking on a journey today into the hidden financial systems most of us are simply never taught in school. We're looking at the architecture of wealth. And look, this explainer isn't just about budgeting for your groceries or, clipping coupons to save a few bucks. This is about uncovering the precise, deliberate mechanics that actually separate the ultra-wealthy from everyone else. For generations, the strategies used to build enduring fortunes have been treated almost like a guarded secret. But here's the thing. Wealth is not built by accident. It is rarely built by luck. It's built by design. So today we're going to deconstruct that design, layer by layer, to understand exactly how financial freedom is engineered from the ground up.
So I have to ask you, is hard work really enough to build wealth? It's kind of the great illusion of our time, right? We're told from day one that if we just put our heads down, grind it out, and work harder than the next person, a rich life is practically guaranteed. But think about it. If that were strictly true, the hardest working people on earth, those pulling double shifts, working intense manual labor, grinding through weekends, well, they'd be the billionaires. And we all know that just isn't reality. Society rewards hard work with a paycheck, sure, but a paycheck alone does not equal financial freedom. So, why do the rich keep getting richer in their sleep, while the rest of the world struggles to keep up despite working harder than ever?
Section 1. The biggest money myth. Okay, let's dive into this. To build a really solid financial structure, we first have to completely demolish the faulty ideas we've been standing on. And this right here is the foundational misunderstanding that keeps millions of brilliant, incredibly hardworking people permanently trapped in the rat race, confusing income with wealth. Earning a higher salary doesn't actually make you wealthy if your expenses just automatically rise to meet it. Consider a highly specialized surgeon earning, say, $500,000 a year. If they're spending that exact same $500,000 every year on luxury mortgages, exotic cars, and ultra-expensive vacations, they aren't wealthy. They are completely dependent on their next shift. Income is purely transactional. You're trading a finite resource, your time, for money. But wealth is an entirely different beast. Wealth is what you build when you detach your time from your earning potential. Take a public school teacher earning $60,000 a year who consistently invests $10,000 of that into assets over 3 decades. That teacher will eventually build a self-sustaining fortune. Wealth isn't the size of your paycheck. It's the realization that money can work for you rather than you working for it.
Section 2. Assets versus liabilities. Now, this is the secret architecture of finance. If you really want to understand how the wealthy construct our fortunes, it all comes down to mastering these critical mechanics. The difference between these two concepts is literally the difference between financial freedom and a lifelong struggle. An asset is simply anything that puts money into your pocket, even while you sleep. I really want you to internalize that definition. The wealthy focus almost entirely on acquiring these financial engines. They don't just buy things, they buy systems that generate cash around the clock. Imagine buying a simple vending machine and placing it in a busy office building. Whether you're sleeping, on vacation, or sitting on your couch watching a movie, that machine is silently dispensing products and collecting revenue. Expand that logic to owning a piece of a profitable company or a property that yields rent. You are acquiring autonomous engines of capital. But contrast that with a liability. A liability is anything that quietly takes money out of your pocket. These are the silent traps, and they are incredibly deceptive. Everyday people often look wealthy because they accumulate high-end liabilities. Picture the person you know with the pristine, brand-new luxury SUV, the sprawling primary residence they barely even have time to enjoy, and a closet full of designer clothes bought on credit. From the outside, this looks like the absolute pinnacle of success. But behind the scenes, these things are silently draining their wealth every single month through massive interest payments, extreme depreciation, maintenance, and taxes. They're paying a huge premium for the privilege of looking rich, sacrificing their actual financial freedom in the process.
The blueprint of financial growth becomes starkly obvious when you contrast these two columns out in the real world. This brilliantly illustrates it. On the asset side, you have stocks, income-producing real estate, and businesses. These systems literally feed you. On the liability side, you have bad debt, like credit cards, expensive cars, and overpriced mortgages. I mean, why is a new car a trap compared to real estate? Well, the exact second you drive a new car off the dealer's lot, it loses a massive percentage of its value. You're paying a premium to hold an item that is mathematically guaranteed to become worth less over time. A rental property, however, historically appreciates in total value while simultaneously handing you monthly rental income. The middle class spends their entire lives buying liabilities, mistakenly believing they're acquiring assets. The wealthy, they spend their lives relentlessly buying assets, which eventually generate enough cash to pay for their liabilities. Section 3. The Architecture of Wealth.
Think of this like actual financial engineering. The wealthy do not rely on one paycheck, period. They diversify their wealth architecture across specific, automated financial systems, stocks, real estate, and businesses. They aren't just hoping for wealth, they're building it piece by piece to create an unshakable foundation. By building multiple pillars, they ensure that if one income stream ever dries up, say a business faces a really rough quarter or the real estate market temporarily dips, the overall structure remains completely stable. The stock dividends and business profits keep the foundation strong while the real estate recovers. It's a calculated, deeply resilient web of income that totally removes the panic everyday people feel when a single job is threatened. Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is the sheer scale of the math behind this architecture. It's staggering when you give it enough time. This is the unstoppable mechanic of compound growth. Notice how it's not a straight, linear line, it's exponential. If you invest a modest amount, let's say $500 a month, into a broad market index fund, it really might not look like much after a year. But over 20, 30, or 40 years, the snowball effect completely takes over. You start earning interest on your initial investment. And then, here's the kicker, you earn interest on that interest. That $500 a month can mathematically transform into well over $1 million by retirement. It's literally your money making money. And then, that new money making even more money, working tirelessly in the background without you having to lift a single finger.
This whole strategy is perfectly encapsulated by investor Warren Buffett, who noted that the power of compound interest and long-term investing is exactly how businesses create billionaires. Buffett is arguably the greatest investor of our time, right? But his strategy for perpetual wealth isn't about rapid-fire day trading, timing the market perfectly, or getting lucky on a wildly speculative bet. It is purely about buying great assets and letting compounding do the heavy lifting over decades. In fact, get this, over 90% of Warren Buffett's immense wealth was accumulated after his 65th birthday. That is the sheer magic of the exponential curve. The ultimate requirement for wealth is patience, which is exactly why it's so difficult for the average person to replicate.
But look, the journey of a long-term investor is a massive test of psychological endurance. In those first few years, you're making your initial investments, you're sacrificing present consumption for future security. And honestly, it feels incredibly slow, almost discouraging. You might look at your accounts and wonder if all that sacrifice is even worth it. But if you push through to the compound growth phase, which usually kicks in between years 5 and 15, the momentum visibly shifts. The curve starts bending upward aggressively as the compounding effect really takes the reins. By year 15 and beyond, you reach the absolute breakthrough, the passive income phase. The assets you spent years acquiring now generate enough revenue to surpass what you could make trading your time for a salary. This journey proves that true wealth is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a carefully built structure constructed over time with immense discipline. Section 4. Fatal financial mistakes. Just as an architect has to account for, say, earthquakes, high winds, and unstable soil, you have to account for the common pitfalls that can completely destroy your financial architecture before it's even finished. And the most common destroyer out there is lifestyle inflation. This happens when every single time you get a raise or a promotion, you immediately expand your standard of living. You make an extra $10,000 a year, so you go out and sign a lease for a car that costs exactly $10,000 a year. You feel richer, sure, but mathematically, you've made absolute zero progress toward financial independence. Add in the paralyzing weight of bad debt, borrowing at insane interest rates for consumer goods that immediately lose value, and the tragic mistake of not investing early enough to harness that compound interest, and you have the exact formula that keeps high earners running on a treadmill until the day they retire. And that brings us to 1. There is one number that represents the absolute most dangerous financial mistake a person can make. Having only one source of income, which is usually a primary job, is an act of profound financial fragility. Think about it. If that one pillar falls due to corporate layoffs, an unexpected illness, or just a sudden economic downturn, your entire financial structure collapses overnight. You're left with zero revenue and mounting liabilities. The wealthy recognize this fragility immediately. They absolutely positively never rely on a single point of failure. Section 5. The final wealth lesson. So, what does this all mean? We've exposed the myth, we've defined the core components, and we've mapped out the necessary structure. The core thesis of wealth building is surprisingly simple. Being rich isn't about spending more, it's about owning more assets. Society constantly bombards us with the exact opposite message. Commercials, social media, they all tell us that wealth is pure consumption. It's the super yachts, the diamond watches, the giant mansions. But true, enduring prosperity is found in ownership. It is entirely about what you own, not what you spend. The people who flash their cash are often at the furthest from real financial security. while the true architects of wealth are quietly in the background, buying up the very systems that the rest of the world relies on.
If you want to pivot from that exhausting rat race and actually become the architect of your own wealth, here are the exact steps. First, you must reframe your mindset and stop working strictly for money. You have to realize that your time is way too valuable to trade linearly forever. Next, redirect a portion of your capital to ruthlessly acquire assets. Treat every single paycheck as seed money to buy a piece of a profitable business, a broad market index fund, or a piece of real estate. Finally, stay disciplined enough to let those systems generate money for years. Over time, the cash flow from those accumulated assets will surpass and eventually replace your salary entirely, finally giving you back total control over your most valuable resource in the world, your time.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Are you building systems, or are you just working harder? Take a second to truly reflect on that. If you're just working harder, taking on more hours, and grinding for a slightly larger paycheck, without deliberately building your asset column, you are essentially constructing a very tall, very heavy building on quicksand. The moment you stop working, the entire thing sinks. It's time to stop treating the symptoms of being broke and start laying a permanent, unshakable foundation. The architecture of wealth is available to absolutely anyone willing to learn the blueprints. If you enjoyed this explainer and this dive into the mechanics of finance, make sure to subscribe for more real business stories and money lessons every single week. Keep learning, keep building, and I will see you next time.